So this episode of Life Hacks is going to be a little different. We're going to talk about life as opposed to talking about projects and things. So one thing that I've noticed is that the shine comes off of certain things. For example, when you're young, you go out and you watch the snow fall. You don't care about its crystalline structure. You don't care that each one's unique. You just like watching the snow to fall. And at a certain point, you get to where instead of enjoying the snowfall, you may just think of it as more shoveling you have to do. You're not looking anew at things every time. And I think that is at a detriment to us all, in especially relationships. If you aren't looking at your partner, someone who you're lucky enough to have in your life, as that every single day, then you're missing out on a lot. There's a woman in my life who has allowed me to take a new look at how I live, the things that I do, the routines that I've gotten into, and basically to realize that they're just routines, they're ruts, they're things that need to be changed up at least every once in a while, if not completely every single day. And that includes eating schedules and sleeping schedules and what you do when and in what order you do things during the day, the chores you have to do, etc. And by looking at things always from that new lens, it allows you to come up with new ideas for things, to allow your creativity to flow in ways it might not otherwise, because you're too set in something. You become complacent about something. Now, I know for some people, when it comes to 3D printing, they're going to 3D print everything. And as you heard from the pod last week on the bird feeders, if you listened to it, if not, quick recap, there are certain parts of the bird feeding setup that I've got that I 3D printed, and some that I purchased, like PVC pipe and milk crates, plastic milk crates. It didn't make sense to print things like that. I needed something big. I didn't want to have to assemble it from different size parts on the 300 by 300 max volume capacity that I've got. So certain things just make sense to purchase and then change things up from there. For example, while I used some of the PVC piping, normal piping accessories, such as T-connectors and curved connectors, to put the pipes together, I created my own to put a second row in. But by looking at things anew every single time, it gives you that ability to come up with new ideas for things. To give another example, Jenna Ortega was on Stephen Colbert the other night, and she needed to play a robot who was seeing the world for the first time, and she realized that if she looked at her younger family members who were, in fact, seeing the world for the first time, there was a way that they looked and there was a way they interacted. And let's face it, when we saw something for the first time, no matter what it is or what age we're at, and we see it for the first time, we drink it in, right? Or we just ignore it because it doesn't meet our expectations, whatever. But if you're open-minded and you see things like that, you drink them in, you embrace it, you start to look at things in your own life maybe a little differently. And that's what my friend has done for me, has allowed me to look at things a little differently and to see the world a bit differently and to see how I live a bit differently. But when it comes to the stuff that we do, right, the life hacks and things that I talk about, having that view, right? Allowing ourselves to look outside the preconceived box that we've created for ourselves of what does and doesn't work allows us to look at things a bit differently and to come up with new ways of doing things. And now that we've got the age where 3D printing is as inexpensive as it is, and becoming a little more ubiquitous than it did before, because you can even go have things printed that you design so you don't have to do it yourself, or you can have things designed for you. It opens up a new world because now you're not constrained by going to the hardware store and finding a part and then trying to dovetail that into whatever it is that you're doing. Now you can actually come up with a part that you need for what you do. It brings up a whole host of new possibilities when you have that flexibility and that freedom. Now, the thing about 3D parts is the design would be expensive if you have to go get it done. Let's be honest. Printing shouldn't be. All right. Even if you have to send it out because you don't want to do the printing yourself, it shouldn't be that expensive to get the printing done because the spools of material are not expensive, at least without tariffs yet. You're talking $20, $30, say $30 for a good roll of a kilogram worth of weight. And those bird feeders that I got, I can print a bunch of those in a kilogram. So it makes for inexpensive parts and it allows you to customize things a little bit more. I've got hooks that I made for the desk so I can hang my water bottle off of it that can also be used in other places for other things like holding cables in place. I've got the back of my multicolor printer extrudes poop, for want of a better term. As it has to change the colors, it has to flush the head. And in order to flush the head, it has to generate output. That output goes into a little thing in the back, which just spits out the back of it. Kind of like a cruise ship. Just throw it out into the environment. By putting a little box on there with magnets, I'm able to direct where it goes. And because I have cats, I have big cat treat bins, 30-ounce size. Just make a little shelf that I can screw onto the table that the printer is sitting on and put the bin underneath this little catcher that I've got. And as the poop spits out, it hits the wall, drops down into the bin, and I'm done. The trick with the K2 that I've got is there's 3 fans on the back, which are unfortunately below the level of where the refuse comes out. Those little bits of plastic. So you have to be very careful about what you set up because you don't want to block the fans. There's a lot of creative people out there that have come up with what look like a Chutes and Ladders game to try to grab that stuff. But to me, I didn't see the point. All I got to do is just make it fall in a particular direction and I'm good. But again, it's looking at things with a new eye. I looked at those chutes before I built mine because I was thinking I could do something, but why don't I just go see if it's available? And everything I saw looked a little bit more complicated than I wanted, and I didn't want to start taking screws out or anything else. I've got magnets. I can just put a couple of magnets on it, and click it right in, and I'm done. And because I have these extra bins kicking around, I can just use that bin and let it fill up and dump it into another bin. Or if I wanted to, just take that bin off and replace it with a new fresh bin and save those bins. I have composting that I do. And come summer, I'm going to take some of those and put them into the compost and see if it works. Composting gets pretty warm in warm weather as everything's starting to break down in there. And I want to see how that works and if the PLA, which is compostable, will actually compost in there. It needs to have heat in order for it to work properly. So we'll see how that goes. And if it doesn't work, then I'll find some place that'll compost it for me. But looking at things differently, what would happen if? What would happen if I didn't do what I did the day before? What would happen if I slept in an extra half hour in the morning, or went to bed a half an hour later, or changed when I eat my meals, or changed the order that I do things? If I feed the cats before I eat, or eat before I feed the cats, does it matter? But it gives some difference. It gives you a different take on things when you change things up. Now, change for change's sake isn't necessarily good, but if it will prompt you to see things that you're doing and take a serious look at them to determine if you're doing them the right way, if you're doing the same thing over and over again just because you always have, for example, or if you're doing it this way because it is the best way for you, then there's no reason to change it then, right? But don't always consider everything you do to be the best way to do it. Don't fall into that trap that I do it this way and this is the only way it can be done. Change it up. See how somebody else is doing it. See what you change and how that will affect not only what you're doing, but affect your day-to-day life. And when it comes to relationships, for God's sakes, always, always, always remember that first time. That first time that somebody looked at you the way you looked at them. That first time that there was that connection, and cherish that and remember that that is important every single day, and look at that relationship with those fresh, clear eyes that you had at the beginning every single day. And it doesn't matter if it's a relationship with the people, with your animals, with work, with your creative stuff, if you do art, with the art stuff, anything that you do, always look at it with those fresh eyes, with the same awe that you had the first time. And that's what I got for you guys this week. And I will talk to you all next week.